Hello, I'm Benjamin Ripley Lyon, and I plan on going over some information about video games, their revenue, and what we can learn from it. Do note that all of the games on here can be found on Steam. Using several sites, including a Steam API site and a few sites that gather this information from the Steam API, I made a list of the 100 games with the highest revenue that can be found on Steam. Following that, I wanted to figure out what year had the highest revenue from those games, what trends can be found from the base price, the highest revenue from a single game, comparing all of them to the average revenue, and then the average revenue for each genre. To begin, let's look over what years had the most releases. 2020 and 2024 had the most general releases within their years. From 2023 and behind, excluding 2011, each year had a single game release. Something we can already learn is that there were significantly more releases from 2020 onwards than before, or at the very least, the average is a bit higher. I believe that this is because COVID required people to have computers in their homes, which encouraged people to invest more in their computers. By doing this, instead of having a TV, a workstation, so on and so forth, the computer became an all-in-one thing, which encouraged people to also use it for entertainment, both in the sense of videos and, well, video games. Compared to the previous chart, the biggest revenue spikes are in 2012, which had a single game release by the name of Counter-Strike 2. For those of you in the audience that aren't familiar with that, it's also commonly referred to as CSGO. Most of the comparative spikes have been from years with multiple game releases. One around 2016, another one around 2020, but none of them really compare to CSGO. Another fun fact is that CSGO at the time of just about now has surpassed 10 billion in revenue. Let's normalize the data a bit. For this, I made an average equation. How I did this was quite simple. I took the current year, 2025, and subtracted the year that the game was released, and then added 1 just to make sure that if a game released in 2025, that it would have at least a value. Following that, we divide the normal revenue of the game versus this number, getting our new average. Even with all of this, and the small outlier in 2024, CSGO is still keeping pace for the most part. The only big bumps come in 2023, 2024, around there. 2025 still having a spike, but it's only been out for a year. If that doesn't say a lot about how the system that CSGO is making revenue, I don't know what will. But let's look at 2020. A majority of the games, I will admit, are multiplayer. Single-player games are as follows: The Sims, Hades, Factorio, Doom Eternal, Crusader Kings 3, and Cyberpunk 2077. The two biggest ones are Apex Legends, a free game, and then Cyberpunk 2077, a full-price one. Apex is a free game that uses blind boxes and cosmetics, along with some other information that we'll go over in a bit, to encourage players to keep coming back and keep spending money. Free games also use the sense of the fear of missing out, or FOMO, making limited time items that encourage people to come back, play, and presumably purchase them. Cyberpunk 2077 is, however, nearly a full price game at $60 or more. The reason why it has such a high revenue is because it is highly anticipated. For upwards of 5 to 7 years before the game's release, it was being talked about. The series that it is from, the Cyberpunk series, is well known in a large amount of sci-fi circles. This was a kind of game that had people looking at it immensely. The rest of the games that are not multiplayer are primarily focused on giving out DLC in order to encourage people to play the game more. Now, let's look at the top 10. You should already note that 6 of them are free. $0 as a base price to get into them. The last 4 are highly anticipated games. Cyberpunk 2077, as we mentioned before, Elden Ring, a sequel to the Dark Souls series that people love to death and even beyond. Baldur's Gate 3, another series of the Baldur's Gate games, and has a large amount of characters that a large amount of people find attractive, and very good storyline. Black Myth Wukong, based on one of the biggest things in history, honestly. Wukong, The Journey to the West, very well known. Most of the games are also well known on this list. We mentioned CSGO. Player Unknown Battlegrounds is the originator of the battleground genre. Defense of the Ancients 2 is one of the originators of the MOBA genre, which I will explain more in depth in a moment. Apex Legends are well known, around a lot of different people. Warframe is Space Ninja Simulator. That's what they go by. Following that, let's even everything out by chalking it to average revenue. Counter-Strike 2 and PUBG are still at the top, but full price games get a little bit closer. By having a $60 price tag, it does make sure that some people don't get into it as much, but the people that are into it are more than happy to eat up whatever additional stuff that they have or get it for their friends so that they can also play it with them. Warframe has not changed as much, but I believe that is because Warframe has a secondary market between players. One person can buy the premium currency known as platinum and trade it for items that they want that someone else has grinded for. Grinding being a term where you work to get something over a large amount of hours, days, etc., etc. Warframe also has the problem of being consistent. Warframe has specific items come out at specific times of the year, and between them, it is just secondary market. Now, let's dig down another little bit. The main genres of these games. MOBA stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena, a two-team battle to destroy the opposing base. MMO is massively multiplayer online game that has multiple people working together or against each other for goals like beating a boss or player versus player battles. RPG is role-playing game where you play as a class like a mage, fighter, gunslinger, rogue, cleric, etc. A game can have multiple of these. I'm sure most of you are familiar with MMORPG as a term, and if not, it's a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. World of Warcraft is a great example of that. But even with all of this, I went through a large amount of my friends to basically confirm if I sounded normal when I was talking about these. There wasn't any real games that I put into one of these categories that they said was, oh, that's incorrect, or oh, that's probably not the exact one that we're looking for this. But for the most part, it was, yeah, that makes sense to me. Like, you could tweak it a bit, but it's fine. The chart also goes to the average revenue of a person could hypothetically expect using the same equation that we used before. MOBA genre has more average revenue, but they primarily focus on both loot boxes and premium currency to get new characters. Shooters are surprisingly lower on the scale than I expected. Now, let's talk about price point. Two of the three games in the $70 price point came out this year. It will inflate the revenue of the game, but I will also mention that the 90 price point is in a similar boat. Came out recently, its numbers are expanded because of that. Excluding these, the most profitable one is free. This makes sense. A free game will get in front of the faces of significantly more people than any other genre or any other variety of game that you are looking for. How does a free game make money, you might be asking? There's a handful of ways. I previously mentioned premium currency. Premium currency in games is a thing that commonly happens in gacha games, known for like gashapon, like claw machine type stuff. Gacha games have a free game system that basically says there is a percentage chance, a low one, that you get this really cool character, and people will spend on some times when it's open upwards of $3,000, and it is a form of online gambling that is regulated in a large amount of different countries, America not being one. The other way that you can use premium currency is to get blind boxes, similar in concept. to gacha. Gacha focuses on you do a 10 pull. You pull 10 of whatever special term that they put on their funny money to have a chance to get this character. Blind boxes are similar, but it can be like cosmetics, weapons, characters, etc., etc. It is gacha, but more extended. Blind boxes also have a similar uh, similar regulations within other countries. The only problem is that because it is primarily cosmetic and does not give a player, for the most part, there are a few that are outliers, a player a distinct advantage, it is not specifically regulated in the same ways or manners. In addition to this, a large amount of free games focus on using a battle pass. A battle pass is basically a sort of checklist, to-do list to do in the game. If you accomplish tasks that are on the list, you fill out levels of the pass to receive a small amount of premium currency and some limited time items. This once again feeds into the whole fear of missing out loop that a large amount of games do. Even Fortnite does a similar thing to this. There is also a second track on most of the battle passes. There is one that is free that everyone gets automatically, and a second one which is paid, which is usually around $10 to $15 depending. But you get significantly more items if you buy the premium version. So if you buy one, you'll on the free pass, you might get something every 5 or 10 levels. On the premium, you get one every single level, and it's usually significantly more than you would get even if you fill out the entire free pass. Some full price games also use this mechanic and add a battle pass in order to encourage people to spend more money on it. This has fallen out of favor for the most part, but some games still try to do similar stuff to it. With the chart and the previous ones, a free RPG with some sort of method to encourage players to purchase the premium currency is probably the best way to make revenue. You may be wondering, Ripley, you just mentioned on the previous slide that MOBA is one of the ones with the highest revenue. The MOBA genre is led by a large amount of titans. Just to name the two big ones, League of Legends and Dota 2. Dota 2 is making this much by itself. League of Legends is probably making significantly more. In order for you to get into the MOBA genre, you have to provide a mechanic in which to do so. Blizzard Entertainment, which is known for World of Warcraft and Diablo, tried to get into it with a large amount of mechanics that turned the game into a lose more type situation, which discouraged people from playing. But if you are ever wondering the best type of game to get into, you're probably looking at either RPG, action, or shooter, probably with a free price tag. The other interesting stuff that I found from this is that with all of the games on this list, a lot of them made sense. There weren't really a lot of outliers that you weren't expecting. I think one of the few that I was surprised at was like Sea of Thieves for one of them. But Sea of Thieves is a multiplayer game that's had a large amount of content added to it, a large amount of DLC, a large amount of the cosmetics and blind boxes that we've talked about, and encourages people to keep playing. A large amount of the games are games that you can play with other people. The only thing more sad than playing a video game in a quiet night is playing a video game alone. Everything is better with friends. So if we want to add another wrinkle to whatever type of game that you want to make, try to make it multiplayer. I thank you all for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day.